She survived a business partner who robbed her blind, walked into her own building with her guard exactly where it needed to be.
Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. If you don't carry those your chicken legs and come sit at the back with the rest of us.
You know, I've had a really great time today. It's too bad I won't be seeing much of you after this.
Victoria Canayo did not build VK Couture by accident. She built it the way real things get built. With 10 years nobody photographed, 3 suppliers who wasted her time and her money, 1 business partner who disappeared with her client list and never once said sorry, and a stubbornness she preferred to call faith. She started small. A rented unit on Allen Avenue, barely wide enough for 3 clothing racks and a full-length mirror. Ready-to-wear pieces, hand-selected, hand-finished. She had an eye nobody could teach her. The kind that looks at a woman and knows, before that woman knows herself, what silhouette she was born for, what color her skin was quietly asking for, what fabric would make her feel, for once, like the version of herself she kept putting off becoming. By the time she was 30, VK Couture had outgrown every room it had ever been given. 3 studios across Lagos, an import line stretching from Turkey to Paris to the fabric markets of East Africa, a ready-to-wear collection that sold out within hours of dropping, a waiting list long enough to humble even the most impatient client. She rarely showed her face in her own campaigns. She let the clothes speak, which meant that if you passed her on the street, plain top, no jewelry, nothing announcing itself, you would never guess who she was. That was exactly how she liked it. But there is a kind of danger in being underestimated by design. It protects you from strangers. It does nothing to protect you from the people already inside your walls. 3 months before the interview that would change everything, VK had a personal assistant named Chaineri. Efficient, impeccably dressed, always early, never loud, always exactly where she was supposed to be. She held every key that mattered: supplier contacts, the client database, the import schedule, the codes to the studio storage rooms. She was the kind of employee who lets a business owner close her eyes at night without one single worry following her into sleep. Then, while VK was away in Abuja for a showcase, a message arrived from a number she didn't recognize. Your PA has been talking to people. The wrong people. Check your CCTV from last Thursday. She almost deleted it. She almost gave Chaineri the benefit of a doubt that hadn't been earned yet. Instead, she opened the footage. What she saw did something to the inside of her chest that did not quickly fill back up. Chaineri, pacing the back office, phone pressed to her ear, pointing at the import racks, giving directions. Specific directions on how to carry out a full robbery of the business VK had built with her own hands. VK flew home that same evening. The next morning, she called Chaineri in, placed a printed still from the footage on the desk between them, and said nothing. She let the image do the talking. Chaineri looked at it, then looked away. I can explain. You can leave. Your last salary is already processed. I don't want drama. I just want you to go. Not loud, not heated. Just the particular quiet of a woman who has been disappointed enough times in her life to know that noise is wasted on betrayal. Chaineri left, and VK was standing in a business that could not pause for her feelings, an import cycle that would not wait, and a chair that needed filling with someone she could actually trust, which she had just learned. The hard way was not a small thing to ask for. She posted the vacancy on a Tuesday evening. By Wednesday morning, she had over 200 applications. That same Wednesday morning, in a single room in Yaba, a 23-year-old girl sat on the floor with a laptop balanced on her knees, refreshing her email for the 12th time before 8 a.m. Her name was Amara. Everyone called her Amma. Amma had been trying to break into the fashion industry the way water tries to enter a sealed room. Steadily, quietly, with the complete confidence that there had to be a crack somewhere, and a complete refusal to stop looking for it. She had a fashion management diploma pinned above her reading table. She could sketch. She could style. She could walk into a room full of fabric swatches and move through them the way some people move through music. Instinctively, joyfully, knowing what she wanted before she could explain why. She had worked briefly at a boutique that closed without warning. She had managed social media for an online store that paid her 3 months late and then folded before the 4th. She had sent out 11 applications, 3 rejections, 4 silences, 4 interviews that were rescheduled and rescheduled until they quietly became nothing at all. She had started to wonder, not loudly, the way you wonder out loud to friends, but quietly, alone, in the way that's harder to shake. whether this industry simply wasn't open, or whether it was open, just not for her. That Wednesday morning, she saw the VK Couture vacancy and her hands went still. She read the requirements slowly. She matched most of them. She took a breath, closed the laptop, slid off her chair, and knelt on the bare floor beside her reading table, the one with her diploma hanging above it, and prayed the most honest prayer she'd prayed in months. If this job is mine, let it be mine without me fighting for it. Without drama, without luck, without who I know. If it's mine, let it be clear. She stood up, opened the laptop, sent the application. Then she spent the next 3 days preparing as if the job already belonged to her, and she simply wasn't allowed to disappoint it. She studied every VK Couture collection from the beginning. She researched the import-export model. She took notes on logistics and client relations and the small gaps she noticed in how ready-to-wear brands usually handled supplier communication. She practiced her answers in the bathroom mirror until they stopped sounding like answers and started sounding like conversation. She didn't buy a new dress. She couldn't afford one. Instead, she ironed the terracotta midi dress that had hung in her wardrobe since last Christmas, buffed her shoes, and decided the rest was God's work to finish. The Tuesday of the interviews, VK stood in front of her bedroom mirror, already dressed. A coral red structured gown, tailored, precise, the kind of dress that announces itself before you've said a word. She reached behind her for the zip. It caught. She eased it. It caught harder. Then, with the small decisive sound fabric makes when it has simply made up its mind, the side seam split open. She stood still, looked at the tear in the mirror, exhaled, walked to her wardrobe and chose something simpler. Flat shoes, a quieter dress, still beautiful. She was incapable of being anything else. But without the statement the first one had carried. It felt, in the moment, like a small inconvenience. It was not. But she didn't know that yet. Because she had already prayed that morning, sitting on the edge of her bed, before the dress, before the tear. Show me the one who is mine. And if none of them is, let it be so obvious I cannot miss it. She picked up her bag and went downstairs. 5 girls arrived at the VK Couture Lecky studio that morning, each dressed with full intention. Sonia came in a power blazer and heels she'd practiced walking in the night before, her confidence already arranged on her face before she'd even crossed the threshold. Amanda wore a jewel-toned shift dress, bold enough to impress, careful enough to still look professional. Bombi floated in wearing pale pink, gold earrings catching the studio light. Jane wore a structured navy co-ord that said, "I am serious," without wasting another word on it. And Amma wore her terracotta midi dress. Simple, put together, the kind of effort that looks effortless only because none of it was accidental. They were shown to the waiting area. Wide, beautifully furnished, exposed brick, framed editorial photographs, fabric swatches mounted like art in shadow boxes. The receptionist appeared with a tray. "Madam Vicky apologizes. She'll be in the building shortly. Please, help yourselves. Champagne. A full bottle. 5 glasses, already poured." 3 hands moved before the sentence had even finished. Jane took hers politely and set it down, untouched. Amanda held hers a moment, then quietly placed it back on the tray. Nobody in that room knew VK was already inside the building. Nobody told them that free champagne before noon, on an empty stomach, in an interview room, isn't kindness. It's a mirror. Sonia was on her second glass before the conversation had even started. Her posture changed. Shoulders dropping, chin lifting, the performance of composure quietly replaced by something looser and far more honest. Amanda's laugh grew edges, amused now at things that were only half funny. Bambi had one shoe off, her third glass resting in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. Her careful mourning was coming undone, gently, at the seams. That was when the door opened. VK walked in from the far end of reception, bag over one shoulder, heading for the internal corridor. A small detour, nothing more. She hadn't planned to pass through the waiting area at all. She was 3 steps from the door when Sonia looked up. "Madam, if you don't carry those your chicken legs and come and sit at the back with the rest of us. And the slap I will land on your face. We'll send you to a psychiatric ward and you will never recover from it. Excuse me. You heard me. You saw all of us sitting here waiting our turn, but you just want to walk past us and go inside. Do we look like we have nowhere else to be? Join the queue like the rest of us and wait your turn." The room went still enough to hear the ice settling in the champagne bucket. "I beg. I can't believe you said that. I'm not. Not what? Not going to sit. You think you're special? There's a seat right there. It won't bite you." VK looked at the seat. She looked at the girls. She looked at the VK Couture logo mounted on the acrylic panel directly behind their heads. Her name, in clean black letters, framing every single one of them without a single person in that room realizing it. Then she walked to the back row and sat down. In minutes, these were the women she had been about to call, one by one, into her own office. She folded her hands in her lap. She said nothing. She decided she would wait and watch and let God finish what he had clearly already started. Between the girl in navy and the girl in terracotta, VK set her bag on her lap and breathed slowly. Be still, she told herself. Be patient. Watch. The girl in the terracotta dress leaned slightly toward her. Don't mind them, Amma said, quiet enough for only VK to hear. Champagne before noon on an empty stomach. It does things to people. Does it? The ones who shouldn't drink always drink the most when it's free. VK almost smiled. Not quite. On her other side, Jane had gone completely still. Ankles crossed, lip balm recapped, saying nothing at all. Then Sonia leaned forward, glass balanced carelessly between two fingers, and asked the question that would unravel the whole room. So, what did all of you actually come here for? And I mean really. Brief, careful answers went around the circle first. Fashion background, styling experience, boutique management. Then Sonia laughed. Loose, comfortable, already 3 glasses past careful. I'll start, then, since I'm clearly the only honest one here. I'm not here for career growth. I'm not here to find my passion or whatever they expect you to say in these things. I have a lifestyle I need to maintain. My followers, my friends, they all think I'm already doing well. And they're not completely wrong. But they're not completely right, either. She sipped. If I'm working at VK Couture, I have access to these clothes. I take a few pieces, I post them, my page stays exactly where it needs to be. Nobody needs to know I have a 9 to 5. It's just strategy. A scattered laugh went around the room. VK's jaw tightened. She kept her eyes forward. Strategy. The word landed like something dropped from a great height. Amanda raised her glass in a small toast, then set it down. At least you're self-aware. My situation is different. I have my own business. Small, struggling, but it has potential. What it doesn't have is a client base or supplier contacts. That's simply why I'm here. As her PA, I'd have full access to her client list, her supplier relationships. All of it. I redirect a few clients who feel underserved. I build my own supplier contacts on the side. I'm not stealing. I'm fishing from a full pool. Vicky has more than enough. More than she can handle. I'll just be helping the overflow find somewhere better to go. It's a business move most people won't do because of so-called morals. I don't have that problem. She shrugged like she'd said something reasonable instead of something rotten. VK exhaled slowly, carefully, through her nose. She had prayed that morning. She had asked God to show her clearly. She had asked that if none of these women were the right person, she would not be able to miss it. She was not missing it. Bambi looked down at her glass and shrugged, quieter than the others. I'm not trying to do any of that. I genuinely just need work. My family's been on my case since January, and I can't keep explaining myself to people. If I get this job, I'll come in. I'll do the job. I'll go home. That's the whole plan. Silence settled for a moment. Then Sonia turned to Jane. And you? Jane hadn't moved, hadn't uncrossed her ankles, hadn't touched a second glass. VK turned toward her too. I'd like to know as well, she said quietly, steadily. Something flickered across Jane's face. She glanced at VK a half-second too long, then looked away. My plan is to do the job. A pause. But what these 3 are doing right now, saying all of this out loud, in this building, is not smart. Employees take things. A piece here, a contact there. A little more than their salary package allows. That's just human nature. You'd be naive to think otherwise. She glanced at Sonia. The problem isn't the intention. The problem is saying it before you've even sat down. You don't know who's listening. That's not ambition. That's carelessness. The one I'd feel sorry for isn't Vicky. It's you. Sonia waved a hand. There's nobody here but us. Jane said nothing more. VK looked at her for a long moment. Jane was not innocent. She had said so herself, wrapped in careful language. A little more than their salary package allows. She had simply calculated that announcing it was foolish, which was its own kind of honesty and its own kind of problem. Then VK turned to the girl in terracotta. And you? Amma looked at her. Not at the group. At her. Something in her expression shifted, the way people shift when they realize they've been asked a real question, not a performance question. I want to learn from someone who's actually built something, not just the fashion side, the whole thing. How a business like this really runs. The imports, the client relationships, the logistics. All of it. VK could see the small glint in her eyes as she spoke. She was getting excited just imagining it. I'm not here to stay forever. I know that. But when I leave, however long that takes, I want everything I take with me to be something I genuinely earned. VK was quiet a moment. What if she doesn't let you leave? Amma blinked, then smiled. Small, steady, like she'd already made peace with the question long before it was asked. Then the business I build inside hers will be enough. I just want mine when the time is right. Something settled in VK's chest. The quiet, conclusive feeling of a prayer answered so clearly it almost embarrasses you for having doubted it. She looked around the room one more time. Sonia, scrolling through Instagram. Amanda, adjusting her dress. Bombi, staring at the ceiling. Jane, ankles recrossed, gone very still. Then she looked at the girl beside her. There you are, she thought. There you are. VK stood, straightened her dress, walked to the center of the reception, and, in a voice that was clear, even, and left no room for misunderstanding, I'll call the first candidate now. Miss Sonia, you will be interviewed in my office. Now. The room went completely still. Sonia blinked, stood, adjusted her blazer, and clicked across the floor and through the door. She came out 11 minutes later, looking like a woman who had walked in expecting one thing and found something else entirely. Amanda went next. She spoke brilliantly, sharp, confident, technically impressive, and then, unprompted, volunteered that she was building her own brand on the side. The follow-up questions were thorough. She left needing both air and water. Bombi walked in with full dignity, having said nothing wrong in front of VK directly. She answered the first question carefully. The second, with a small unsteadiness. The champagne had made a decision about the third question before she could. She was gently thanked and guided out in under 8 minutes. Jane did well. Honest, organized, genuinely capable. The committee noted her carefully. Not dismissed, but not chosen either. Amma went last. She sat across from the committee like she had always been meant to be in that chair. She answered every question with the ease of someone who had been carrying the knowledge long before anyone thought to ask for it. She knew the collections. She had studied the supply chain. She had specific, considered suggestions. Not theoretical ones, about real gaps she'd noticed in VK Couture's logistics. She talked about fashion the way people talk about the thing they've loved since before they were old enough to name it. At the end, she was asked where she saw herself in 5 years. Building something of my own, but doing it with everything I learned here. Properly, cleanly, without cutting corners. The way it should be done. The committee exchanged a look Amma noticed but couldn't fully read. 3 days later, Amma's phone rang. She looked at the screen for 1 full second before she answered. She listened, said thank you, twice, hung up. Then she sat on the edge of her bed, stared at the diploma on the wall, and didn't move for almost a full minute. Finally, quietly, to nobody in the room, she said, "Okay. Now the real work begins." Nobody tells you what it actually feels like to work for someone you genuinely admire. It isn't always comfortable. Real learning rarely is. But it's the kind of uncomfortable that grows you in the direction you actually want to go. Amma arrived every morning before she needed to. She watched how VK read a room before she ever walked into it. How she handled a difficult supplier without raising her voice and without giving up a single inch of ground. How she packaged a garment. Not just physically, but emotionally. The story she wrapped around it. The way she made a woman feel understood before she'd even tried anything on. VK noticed and gave her more. Not more errands, more access. She let her sit in on negotiations, manage a full batch of ready-to-wear from sourcing to delivery. She took her along on a buying trip to Istanbul and watched her move through the textile markets with the instinct of someone who'd been doing it for years. One evening, at the hotel, VK poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from her. "You are not here just to assist. No, Ma. I told you from the beginning. You did. So I'm not going to pretend I don't see what I see. You have it. The eye, the instinct, the patience. The business side just needs time. I'm not keeping you. I want to be clear about that. I will keep teaching you for as long as you want to learn. And when the time comes, I will open every door I can for you. But you have to promise me something." "What?" "When you sit where I sit, remember who is sitting across from you. Your own Amma is already out there somewhere, applying to something, being overlooked by someone. Don't miss her." Amma nodded slowly. The way you nod when something reaches the part of you that's deeper than your head. "I won't miss her." Amma's departure wasn't dramatic. It was the way the right endings always are. gradual, and so clean it almost hurt. Inside VK Couture, she had quietly built a small wholesale coordination model for ready-to-wear. VK had given her the room to pilot it, and it had worked better than either of them expected. When Amma finally said the words, "I think I'm ready, May," VK had already been waiting for them. She wrote Amma's recommendation letters herself, made calls to 4 suppliers on her behalf, gave her a rented unit for her first studio, and then did one more thing Amma hadn't expected. She announced it publicly, on VK Couture's own platforms. "One of our own is stepping into her own light. Amara Designs is coming. You should watch." Amma saw the post from the back of a taxi on her way home and cried the whole ride. Not from sadness, from the particular kind of gratitude that has no proper response, so it just becomes tears. Before she left, VK had one more problem to solve. She needed a new PA. And she had learned, more than once now, that the person sitting across from you in an interview room is not always the person they become once they're inside your walls. She knew this better than almost anyone, and she knew someone else who knew it too. They planned it together one quiet afternoon in VK's office. Same setup. Champagne. 5 new candidates. "I walk in from the outside," VK said. "You sit among them. You want me to be Sonia? Call you out and let the others reveal what they really are? I want you to watch, to listen, before anyone knows anything." On the day of the new interviews, Amma arrived. Simple, beautiful, she had never stopped being that, but quiet. Unremarkable in the way that makes you look twice. She took a seat in the back row. The new candidates arrived beautifully dressed, sharp, prepared. The champagne was offered. Glasses lifted without hesitation. Amma placed hers back on the tray. She sat, and she waited. Then VK, dressed deliberately plainly, simpler even than that first Tuesday 3 years ago, walked in through the side entrance. She was halfway across the room when Amma looked up. "Madam, this row is for the interview people. If you want to sit, go to the back." And that was when true colors began to show all over again. Some things don't arrive loudly in life. They sit down beside you when you least expect it, unplanned, and they find you before you even knew you were being searched for. And sometimes, those turn out to be the best things that ever happened to a person. If this story followed you somewhere, don't scroll past it. Sit with it for a second. We tell these stories every week about patience, about what people are really made of when they don't know anyone important is watching.